Good evening. Pretty sure you know what single malt Scotch is. Must come from Scotland, of course. Made from 100% malted barley. Has to be distilled in one or more batches at a single distillery. And it's got to be matured in oak casks for a minimum of 3 years. And it has to be distilled below 98.4% ABV and bottled at least 40% or 80 proof. What I find interesting is that now we have an American version. We can't call it Scotch, obviously, but we can make it by the same rules, if you will, and that is happening. And it's sort of an emerging new whiskey, if you will. Again, it follows all the rules that you have for Scotch, except one. It's made from 100% malted barley, distilled in one distillery, but it has to be mashed, distilled, and matured in the United States. It has to be matured in oak casks, and no more than 80% alcohol. So it's a little bit different than the Scotch version. And bottled at least 80 proof or 40% ABV. So it's interesting to me that we have a new category of whiskey, not real new, but as I said, emerging. And my expectation was that, wow, it will taste like Scotch. It doesn't necessarily, and the reason for that, it has to do with the barley. In Scotland, there are not as many varieties of barley as we have here in the United States. The geography alone would dictate that, the size of the United States versus the size of Scotland. So we have regional versions of barley. We have areas that don't have any barley naturally occurring, so they have to import it from somewhere. But it has to all come from America to be an American single malt whiskey. So I thought I'd try one tonight. There are several on the market. I don't even know how many. I believe I have found something like 20. Not all available everywhere. I'm going to try one tonight called Westward. It's made Westward American Single Malt Whiskey, made out in Oregon. It is 90 proof, so 45% ABV. Again, it follows all the rules. By the way, there are no set laws or regulations yet in the U.S. However, there is a group called the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission who is striving, believe it or not, to actually have some government regulation or some rules at least that they can classify American single malt whiskey by, and those are the rules they have laid out are the ones that I just read. This actually came from their website. So this is an American single malt whiskey. The first sip I had was a few minutes ago. Very interesting. I forgot to notice if I thought it tasted like Scotch. It's interesting. I wouldn't mistake it for a Scotch. If you gave it to me in a blind tasting, I think I would guess it was a bourbon. It has both on the nose and on the palate some vanilla. I noticed that right away. I'm getting a little bit of cedar. I want to call it pine nuts, but I think it's more cedar and even a hint of tobacco. So it's not really drinking like Scotch, but it is a little bit reminiscent, of course, barley. So it has to be somewhat similar. Very smooth. I've had 2 sips of it, and I would buy a bottle. Well, gee, I already did. It's very good. I'm not sorry I bought it. It's a little on the nose, and in the first taste you get a little bit of citrus fruit. Maybe orange peel as opposed to orange slice, if you will. You got more of a, dare I say, bourbon characteristic than Scotch, but it has that barley bite, I like to call it. So it's interesting. I'm going to explore this category in a lot more detail over the next few months. I'm searching for other examples of American single malt. I've been able to find a few so far. But I have to pair it with a cigar, and since this was kind of blind, I said, it sounds like, and reading on their website and all the descriptions of this, Westward, I felt like it's probably got a lot of character, sort of a bold flavor, and it didn't disappoint. It's very flavor forward. It's 90 proof. It's not what I would call high proof, but it's not low either. So it's interesting when I look at the legs on the glass. It actually looks like a higher proof. It's leaving some pretty reasonable residue up there. So it drinks like a little bit stronger than 90 proof, maybe not 100. A lot of flavor, very bold. So I picked a cigar that I believe is bold as well. Drew Estate Liga Privada T152. This really is the follow-up to the famous Liga Privada number 9, which we've all had. Actually, that was the first cigar I grabbed tonight, and then I thought, no, I want to try this one instead. It's got a Habano wrapper, a sun-grown Habano wrapper, very dark, oily, very pretty. And it's a reddish brown, and you can sort of see the oils in it a little bit. So it's some gradation in there. After they roll the cigar, they age it for a year before they ship it. So that means the flavors end up getting enhanced. Very earthy. Now, I'm early on in this cigar, but I've had this before, and I get what I like to call the barnyard brilliance in it. It has some sort of earthy tones, grass, cedar again. I was thinking that I remembered this had a little bit of cedar in it, and I had a feeling that would too, because I seem to find that when you marry barley scotch with oak casks, I always find some cedar note in there, and sure enough, this has it, the whiskey has it, so you would think they would go together. And the other thing I remembered about this, and I read it as well on the Westward website, is the orange note in there, the orange peel note, if you will. A little acidity comes through. To be honest with you, I would not have picked that out on my own. But let's see what happens when you pair it with this whiskey that has some of the same listed characteristics. It's got some staying power. Just starting to dissipate, fade away a little bit now. Very pleasant. Just as the notes of that whiskey were starting to fade away, still there, but weakened quite a bit. Draw on this cigar seemed to bring it back to life and gave it some extra mileage. Let's try that again a little sooner. Yeah, I definitely prefer this one to try the whiskey first and then this. Wait a good 5 seconds, not more than 10, and then hit the cigar. I don't think you got yourself a nice evening. Now, not for the faint of heart, I guess, if you want to talk what your investment would be. This bottle is around $70. I've seen it at $69 and seen it at $75, both brick and mortar and online. So I use $70 because I think that's what I paid for this one. That means that brings this ounce and a half into $4.15. Certainly less expensive than it'll be at your local country club. So if you're drinking it at home, $4.15. T52 is for a lot of us a hefty price tag of $17.50 for for this particular size. It's a double Corona, I believe. This cigar will last a good 90 minutes. So the combination, which I think is very good, comes in at $21.65 if you're going to have one of these and one of these. I can't do that. This is good enough, so I'm going to have two of these, so that's going to add another $4.15 to it. So we're at $25.80 for a cigar and two drinks this evening, which I think is how this is going to wrap up. I would invite you to explore the American single malt category with me. Let me know what you find. If you have some recommendations of some that you've tried that you think we ought to pass on to some other folks, I'd love to hear it. As I said, I've got a few more that I'll be pairing here in the next few weeks, and I'm looking for more. So let me know if you know some good ones, and let's learn more about this American single malt whiskey category, and I'm all for supporting it. Another whiskey we can enjoy here in the USA. So that's all I have this evening. I'm going to finish this, probably pour another one, and wrap up the evening with the rest of this cigar. Enjoy yourself. See you later.